The night was cold. A biting wind howled through the endless trees, shaking branches and sending chills through the darkness. Snowflakes fell in slow, silent patterns, covering the forest floor in a thin, icy blanket. But beneath one of those towering trees, half buried in the frost, lay a small figure, motionless, shivering. A young boy, no older than 10, curled into himself, his tiny arms wrapped around his body for warmth. His jacket was thin, his fingers numb. He had been walking for hours, maybe even longer. He had lost track of time. The sun had set long ago, and now he was alone, completely alone. His body trembled violently. His eyes fluttered. Sleep was taking over. He knew he shouldn't give in. He had read stories. He knew that falling asleep in the cold could be dangerous, but his body was too weak to fight anymore. His breathing slowed. His thoughts blurred. And then a sound, a deep, heavy crunch echoed through the trees. Something big, something alive. The boy's breath hitched. His exhausted mind screamed run, but his body wouldn't move. Footsteps. Slow, steady. A shadow emerged from the trees. Then, two glowing eyes stared back at him. A bear. His heart pounded in his chest. His breath turned shallow. This was it. This was how it all ended. But then, something strange happened. The bear didn't attack. It didn't growl. It didn't move closer. Instead, it just watched him. And in that moment, the boy realized he wasn't alone anymore. Just a few hours earlier, everything had been perfect. The sun was shining, birds chirped in the treetops, and the crisp forest air smelled of pine and fresh earth. It was supposed to be a simple family camping trip, just one night under the stars, roasting marshmallows and telling stories around the fire. The boy, Liam, had been excited from the moment they arrived. His father had promised to teach him how to start a fire without matches, and his older sister had dared him to catch a fish with his bare hands. Liam had never felt more alive. The campsite was set in a valley, surrounded by towering pine trees and dense undergrowth. A small river ran nearby, its crystal-clear water rushing over smooth stones. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. That's when curiosity got the best of him. While his parents were busy setting up the tent, Liam wandered a little too far from the site, following the sound of rustling leaves and a flickering movement in the distance. A fox, small, sleek, and red, darted between the trees. It paused just long enough to look back at him before vanishing into the shadows. A challenge. Liam grinned. He could catch up to it. Just a few more steps. Step after step, he pushed deeper into the woods, his heart pounding with excitement. The sound of the river faded behind him. The voices of his family disappeared. And then, the fox was gone. Only now did Liam realize how deep into the woods he had come. The trees were taller here, their branches forming a thick canopy overhead. The sunlight barely made it through, leaving eerie shadows on the ground. The once clear path was gone, replaced by nothing but endless trees in every direction. For the first time, fear crept into his chest. He turned around, tried retracing his steps, but the forest didn't look the same anymore. Everything was different. The bushes he had pushed through earlier weren't there. The fallen tree he had climbed over was missing. It was as if the forest had swallowed up every sign of his journey. Liam's breathing grew shallow. He spun around, looking for anything familiar, but it was useless. He was completely lost. He called out, "Mom? Dad?" His voice sounded small, swallowed by the trees. He tried again, louder this time, but there was no answer. Panic set in. Liam started walking faster, then running. Branches tore at his arms. His legs ached. His breath came in sharp gasps. But no matter how far he ran, he only ended up deeper in the woods. Hours passed. The sun began to set. And then, a new fear crept in. The sounds of the forest had changed. Earlier, there had been birds singing, leaves rustling in the wind. But now, it was silent. The kind of silence that made your skin crawl. Liam's heart pounded as he realized he wasn't alone. Something was watching him. Something was waiting. The temperature dropped. The wind picked up, sending shivers down his spine. The night was coming fast, and with it, the dangers of the wild. Liam curled his arms around himself, his breath turning to mist in the cold air. He needed to find shelter. Fast. But where? Then, just as he took another step forward, a branch snapped behind him. He whipped around, eyes wide. Nothing. But deep in the trees, something moved. And that's when he heard it. A low, rumbling sound. A sound that made his blood run cold. Something big was nearby, and it had just found him. Liam's breath came in short, sharp gasps. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure that whatever was out there could hear it. The low, rumbling sound came again, deep, menacing. Was it a growl? Or just the wind? He squinted into the darkness, his hands gripping his arms tightly to stop them from shaking. The trees loomed like giants around him, their long, gnarled branches swaying with the wind, casting eerie shadows on the ground. He took a step back. Snap! His foot landed on a dry twig. The sudden crack echoed through the silent forest. And then it moved, a large shape, just beyond the trees. Lumbering, heavy, slow. Liam's legs felt frozen in place. He wanted to run, to scream, to do anything, but his body refused to move. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the shape melted into the darkness. Gone. But Liam knew better. It was still there, watching, waiting. He had to get out of here. Now. He turned and ran, his small feet stumbling over roots and rocks. The cold wind lashed against his face, stinging his skin. His jacket was thin, too thin for the night air. The deeper he ran into the woods, the colder it got. And then, the first snowflake fell. Liam barely noticed at first, but within minutes, tiny white specks filled the air, swirling around him in a delicate, silent dance. The forest, already dark, became even more terrifying under the thickening snowfall. His teeth chattered. His hands felt numb. Panic clawed at his chest. Would his parents ever find him? No, he couldn't think like that. He had to be strong. But every step was harder than the last. He didn't realize how tired he was until he tried to slow down. His legs felt like lead. Each breath burned his throat. His head felt light. He was exhausted, hungry, freezing. The weight of his body became too much to carry, and suddenly, he collapsed. Liam hit the ground hard. He barely felt the pain. The snow was already gathering around him, covering his arms, his legs. His eyelids felt so heavy. Maybe if he just closed them for a second. Just for a second. His body begged for rest. The warmth of sleep called to him like a soft lullaby. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the truth. If he fell asleep here, in the cold, he might never wake up again. But he was too weak to fight it. His breathing slowed. His body stilled. The forest seemed to breathe with him, the wind whispering through the trees. The snow fell faster now. And then, a sound. Not the wind. Not the trees. Something big. Moving. Getting closer. Liam's heavy eyelids fluttered. He barely had the strength to turn his head. A shadow loomed over him. Massive. Powerful. Through half-lidded eyes, he saw something brown. Fur. Heavy paws crunching the snow. A bear. The last thing he saw before everything faded to black was a pair of glowing eyes staring down at him. Then darkness. The darkness pulled Liam deeper. His body felt light, floating somewhere between reality and unconsciousness. He was slipping away. Then warmth. A sudden, strange warmth wrapped around him, chasing away the cold. It was soft, like a thick blanket had been draped over his small body. His mind struggled to understand. Had his parents found him? Was he dreaming? But then, he heard it. A deep, rhythmic sound. Slow and steady. Breathing. Liam's eyes fluttered open, heavy with exhaustion. A shape loomed over him. Massive. Brown. Powerful. His heart stopped. A bear. It was inches away, its enormous body curled around him, like a protective wall. Thick fur pressed against his back, radiating warmth. Its chest rose and fell with each breath, slow and steady. Liam's pulse pounded in his ears. He didn't move, didn't even breathe. The stories flashed through his mind. Bears attacking campers, clawing through tents, tearing apart anything in their path. He had seen videos. He knew what these creatures were capable of. He was going to die. His fingers twitched. If he moved too fast, would the bear wake up and tear him apart? He swallowed hard, his throat dry. The bear shifted slightly, its deep exhale sending a warm gust of air over Liam's face. But it didn't attack. It didn't growl. It was just lying there. For the first time, Liam noticed something strange. The bear's posture. Its body was relaxed. It wasn't pinning him down, wasn't acting aggressive. It was protecting him. The wind howled through the trees, and Liam's body shivered. But the warmth of the bear kept him from freezing. He hesitated. Slowly, carefully, he shifted his hand forward. His small fingers brushed against the bear's fur. It was thick, coarse, but incredibly warm. Liam's chest rose and fell in short, panic breaths. Was this really happening? The bear stirred slightly. Liam froze. It lifted its head just an inch, sniffed the air, then let out a low, rumbling sigh. Then, it lowered its head back down. And just like that, it went back to sleep. Liam couldn't believe it. A wild bear, a predator, a beast, and yet, it had chosen to lie beside him, to keep him warm. Why? Did it mistake him for its own cub? Did it sense his helplessness? Or was it something more? Liam didn't know. But as exhaustion weighed down on him again, he knew one thing for sure. If the bear hadn't come, he wouldn't have made it through the night. His heavy eyelids closed, and this time, he let sleep take over. Outside, the storm raged on. The snow piled higher. The wind screamed through the trees. But nestled against the massive, breathing form of the bear, Liam was safe. For now. The night deepened. The storm howled through the forest, whipping snow into the air like a furious ghost. The cold was unbearable, merciless. If Liam had been alone, he wouldn't have survived. But he wasn't alone. The massive bear, its thick fur heavy with frost, lay beside him like an impenetrable wall against the cold. Its body radiated warmth, shielding him from the freezing night. Liam barely understood what was happening. His mind teetered between exhaustion and fear. A wild animal was keeping him alive. Every instinct told him to run, to get away. But his body was too weak, too frozen. And something deep inside him whispered, "Stay still. Don't move." The bear shifted slightly, exhaling a warm breath into the icy air. Its slow, steady breathing was the only sound in the silent, snowy wilderness. Liam lay there, curled against the creature's thick fur, his small frame disappearing into its warmth. Then a sound, a snap, a crack. Something was moving in the darkness. Liam's eyes flickered open, his heart pounding. It wasn't the bear. Beyond the trees, shadows shifted. Low, guttural sounds echoed through the forest. Sounds Liam had only heard in documentaries. Wolves. A pack. They were close. Too close. Liam sucked in a sharp breath. Would the bear protect him? Or turn on him? The bear lifted its massive head. Its ears twitched. A deep, rumbling growl formed in its throat. Low, warning, dangerous. The night fell still. The wolves hesitated. One step closer, then another. Then, the bear stood up. It rose to its full height, towering over the boy. Its presence was colossal, dominating, terrifying. Liam's breath caught in his throat. Was it going to leave him? Attack him? But the bear didn't even glance at him. Instead, it turned toward the shadows, toward the threat. The wolves were watching, waiting, calculating. Then, the bear let out a thunderous roar, so loud, so deep, it seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. Liam had never heard anything like it. It wasn't just a sound. It was a warning, a command. For a long, heart-stopping moment, the wolves remained still, their glowing eyes locked on the massive creature before them. Then, one by one, they vanished into the darkness. Gone. Liam's entire body sagged with relief. The bear, still standing tall, watched for a moment longer before slowly lowering itself back down. It huffed, exhaling one last warning into the cold air. Then, it lay back down. And Liam knew, this wasn't just an accident. It wasn't just chance. The bear had protected him. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. From the cold, from exhaustion, and now, from predators. Why? Liam didn't know. Maybe he never would. But one thing was certain. The bear wasn't going anywhere. Liam's tired eyes fluttered closed. The storm raged on, the wind howled, the snow piled higher. But the boy and the bear, they rested. And, for the first time that night, Liam felt safe. Liam stirred as the first rays of sunlight broke through the treetops. The storm had passed, leaving a fresh blanket of snow covering the forest floor. The air was still cold, but it no longer felt suffocating. For the first time since he got lost, Liam didn't wake up shivering. He blinked, trying to process everything. The bear, the night, the wolves. It wasn't a dream. He turned his head and felt the coarse, warm fur still pressed against him. The bear was still there, lying beside him, its breath slow and steady. Liam didn't know what to do. Should he move? Should he stay still? Would the bear still protect him? Or had its job been done? Then, as if sensing his thoughts, the bear shifted. It stretched its massive paws forward, shook off the layer of snow that had settled on its thick fur, and rose to its feet. Liam instinctively shrank back. This was it. This was when the bear would finally turn on him. But instead, the bear just stood there, watching him. A long silence passed. Then, it took a step forward. Liam held his breath. Another step. Then another. The bear wasn't walking away. It was moving slowly, stopping every few feet, and then looking back. It wanted him to follow. Liam hesitated. Could he trust it? Then, he thought about the night before. The bear could have killed him. It didn't. It could have left him to freeze. It didn't. It could have let the wolves take him. It didn't. Maybe, just maybe it was leading him home. With one deep breath, Liam took his first step forward. The bear huffed softly, as if approving his choice, and continued walking. Step by step, Liam followed. They walked through the quiet forest, past trees heavy with snow. Everything looked the same, but somehow, the bear knew exactly where it was going. For what felt like an eternity, Liam followed the giant creature through the endless trees. His legs ached, his feet were numb, but he didn't stop. He didn't need to, because he trusted the bear. Then a sound, faint at first, then louder. Voices. Liam's heart leapt. People. His name. His family. The bear stopped. Liam looked back at it, his eyes wide with gratitude and disbelief. It had led him to safety. The bear exhaled deeply, watching him for a moment longer. Then, without a sound, it turned and disappeared into the trees. Gone. Liam stood there, frozen. Had it really happened? Had a wild bear really saved his life? Tears burned his eyes. And then, he ran toward the voices. Liam's legs burned as he ran, his breath coming in short gasps. The voices were getting closer. His heart pounded, not from fear but from hope. Then, a break in the trees. Sunlight streamed through, blinding him for a moment. And then, he saw them. Figures moving frantically. Bright jackets. A familiar voice. His mother. Liam. The sound of her voice sent a surge of energy through his tired body. He pushed forward, stumbling into the clearing. In an instant, strong arms wrapped around him, pulling him into warmth. His mother sobbed against his frozen cheek. His father held him tightly, his voice shaking with relief. "We thought we lost you," his father whispered. Liam wanted to speak, but the only thing he could think about was the bear. He turned, but the forest behind him was empty. Gone. Like a ghost. The creature that had kept him alive had vanished. The rescue team checked him over, their faces lined with both concern and amazement. How had he survived the freezing night? The storm? The wolves? Liam looked at them, his voice barely a whisper. A bear saved me." At first, no one spoke. Then, one of the searchers exchanged a glance with another. "That's impossible," one of them muttered. "A wild bear. They're unpredictable. It should have attacked." His mother held him closer. "Are you sure, sweetheart? Maybe you were just in shock." But Liam knew the truth. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a mistake. The bear had been there. It had protected him. And for some reason, it had let him go. Days later, as the news spread, experts were called in. Wildlife specialists, rangers, even scientists. Everyone had a theory. Maybe the bear had recently lost its own cub and saw Liam as a helpless young one. Maybe, by some rare instinct, it had chosen to protect rather than harm. Or maybe it was something else. A rare, unexplainable bond between human and beast. Liam didn't care about theories. He only knew one thing. A bear had saved his life, and he would never forget it. Liam never saw the bear again. But every time he looked at the forest, every time the wind rustled through the trees, he wondered, did the bear know what it had done? Was it watching from a distance? Or had it simply moved on, fading back into the wilderness like a silent guardian? Some called it instinct. Others called it a miracle. But for Liam, it was something more. It was a reminder that even in the wildest, most dangerous places, kindness can exist in the most unexpected forms. And perhaps, just perhaps, the bear had been more than just an animal that night. It had been a protector, a savior, a friend. What do you think? Was this just nature at work? Or was there something deeper, something we may never fully understand? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this incredible true story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more unbelievable animal rescue stories. Because sometimes, the wild holds secrets we can only dream of.